Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and I've got a great interview lined up today because I grew up, as many of you did, watching Star Wars and Jurassic Park and a lot of great movies that really redefined what cinema and imagination was all about. And I'm joined today by Phil Tippett, who had a very large role in all of those movies, and now he's making a move into more interactive entertainment. So we're going to be talking about his new Hologrid Monster Battle game that he's working on. But before we do that, first, Phil, I want to just welcome you to the channel, and thanks for giving me some of your time today. I know we have some lighting issues that might come in and out in the space that you're in there. But just tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Star Wars and what were some of the things that you worked on those films?
Previous to Star Wars, most of the people that I worked with worked at a commercial house called Cascade Pictures of California in Hollywood. And we'd always wanted to work on, big Hollywood movies, but the visual effects divisions in a lot of those studios had been dismantled, and it was really, really hard to get into the unions as well. And so what Lucas did was he set up ILM outside the union jurisdiction in Valencia, and that allowed a bunch of other people to come on that couldn't get into the unions. So two of my friends, Dennis Murin and Ken Ralston, were hired on as camera operators, and they were on the night crew, and I would go by and visit them and have dinner with them and see what was going on. And at some point, George Lucas, he wasn't satisfied with the cantina scene from Star Wars. He felt that some of the creatures were too like Beatrix Potter, and he wanted more, alien stuff. So he hired a friend of mine, Rick Baker, makeup artist, and Rick agreed. He was busy on another show, but Rick brought on 4 out-of-work stop-motion animators, John Berg, Blaine Liskin, Doug Beswick, and myself. And so we ran this rubber shop, working over some of Rick's masks and making a bunch of other things from other designs that we had done or Ron Cobb had done. And that was our introduction to George. He would come in once a week and check progress. And it was at that point in time that he saw a stop-motion puppet that I had built when I was much younger. And that gave him the idea to do the chess set as a stop-motion thing. So John Berg and myself had to really quickly, in a matter of a couple of weeks, build a bunch more creatures, 8 more creatures, and that were articulated that we could animate, and brought them to ILM. Dennis set up the shot, and George directed, what he wanted the characters to do, and that was our introduction. And from there, we just went on to the other Star Wars movies.
And I guess you did the AT-AT walkers and all these iconic scenes from these movies you had some role in, right?
Yeah, well, I was an animator on those. So I animated, John Berg and I animated most of those shots. And we created a little character, it was kind of like a horse called the Tauntaun that
right.
Luke and Han ride around in. So yeah, that started that.
It's a pretty amazing career path, and to find yourself in one of these iconic films. Did you have any idea, and I'm sure you've been asked this all the time, but when you were in the middle of Star Wars working on these crazy scenes and doing things that really hadn't been seen in mainstream film for a while, did you have any idea it would become what it became?
Well, for the first Star Wars, when we got hired on, George screened the cantina scene and the chess scene for us, and we were big fans of his already. And so it was a huge opportunity to work on a cool movie with a director that we respected. And but it didn't really completely sink in until we went to the cast and crew screening. And from that opening shot, I mean, everybody was blown away. I don't think anybody really knew, the extent of, how wonderful that film was at the time. And I know a lot of the guys, some of the other guys, myself not included, went out and bought 20th Century Fox stock.
So do you regret that decision now?
Yeah.
It was, I'll tell you, growing up in the period of time when those movies were first released, it was just the impact it had on my generation. It was just, our imaginations just exploded from what you all contributed on these movies, and it was just, I just want to thank you for providing so much joy in our lives on behalf of me and all my friends. And you came back and worked on The Force Awakens, and I guess continuing that chess piece set, right?
Yeah, well, that kind of, in a way, loops into, some of the stuff we're doing for the Holochess game, in that I got a call from Kathy Kennedy. Hey, Phil, we want to bring back the chess set. Are you in? I'm like, sure. And so I spoke with J.J. Abrams, and what he wanted was the original chess set to be recreated. We couldn't use the characters that we had done years before, because they had pretty much disintegrated. They were made out of different kinds of rubber, and they just had fallen apart. John Berg and I made a little chess set plaque and put the characters on that and gave it to George as kind of a thank you gift for letting us work on his picture. And he had that in his office for years. So we went out to the archives, and we used a process called photogrammetry, which is what the Holochess game used as well. And that is a way of capturing the image of a real object and then turning that into a computer graphic. So for the chess set, we filmed these disintegrating stop-motion puppets, all of them about that high, and put them into the computer. And into the computer, I mean, it really was an archaeological reconstruction kind of a thing, like fleshing out a dinosaur. So they were reconditioned, and whatever was broken was fixed in the computer. And then those were 3D printed out as objects the size that the characters the size that the chess set originally was. And then molds were made from that. Stop motion armatures were made, and rubber was cast around those. So that's how we reconstructed all of that stuff. And it's very, very kind of a similar thing for the Holochess game, in that when Mike came to me, he wanted to see if I was willing to contribute design work to the project. And for his Kickstarter, I had a bunch of stuff just archived. And so we went through all of that stuff I'd made, 20, 30 years ago for various projects that I wanted to do. And then I've been making a series of short films called Mad God that has a number of characters. So we repurposed some of those for the Hologrid Kickstarter. And it was the same thing. We photogrammetized them and got them in the computer and sent them to Mike, and then he rigged them and his animators animated. And with photogrammetry, what you get is you get the actual shape of the character, you get colors and textures. So once we'd done that, my job was essentially over for that part. We'll develop other creatures in the future, more specifically for the game. But on this, it was like, Mike, I'm totally in, as long as I don't have to know anything about playing the game and how that works. And so it was that's how it was a totally fine partnership for me.
So as I understand it, this game is going to involve both physical cards and your mobile phone, and you're going to be able to play this game and see it play out in augmented reality on your tabletop, right?
If you have your iPhone, and I'm looking down at the little table that I'm sitting in front of, you can see that table on the screen. And then when you press the buttons and get the app up for the game, a grid, like a checkerboard type grid, appears locked onto the table. And then you also get cards that have pictures, little icons of the various characters. And each of the characters have are different in the hierarchy and have different kinds of spells or weapons or whatnot. So you put down one of these things and bam, the creature shows up on one of the blocks. You put down another one, bam, another creature does. And once the two sides have built their armies, then you engage in the gameplay and move forward and take over another person's space and breathe fire and incinerate one guy and then, pick another guy up and pulverize him. So that's the game.
A lot of the same things that we saw in that chess piece there now kind of brought to life on your phone in augmented reality. It's kind of cool. It's mixing physical and digital into a space there, and it's really, really cool stuff. So where have you've seen this industry now for a number of years, kind of transform and go from physical to digital to a mix of the two, and where do you see things going from here? I mean, we see this interactive medium developing. We see the Force Awakens in particular, where you really have a mix of both the digital effects with now they call them the practical effects. Where do you see the industry going, based on where you've seen it go?
Well, we did a 1 minute long VR piece that was based on my Mad God short films. And we were approached by a company that had a little bit of money and was putting together like 20 or 30 different VR experiences where they would go out and they would hire artists and just say, do something, just do stuff. And so that's what we did. We shot some of my Mad God sets 360 degrees, and then we animated stop motion characters against green screen and then composited them in. And so it's a 360 degree world. So you're surrounded by these little deformed guys.
That's cool.
And the entire experience is contingent on binaural sound, which is a 360 degree sound field. And since we don't have the storytelling device editing to move the narrative forward, everything, all the choreography is cued off of sound cues. So you break everything down into zones, northeast, south, west, above, below, and that really kind of orchestrates how. So the whole concept was kind of thought of as one. Sound and image were thought of as at exactly the same time in terms of the design of the scene.
Very neat. So there's a lot of possibilities now that all this new technology is bringing, yet you're still having to do the craft of designing these characters physically, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody is saying the same thing in these AR, VR worlds. It's the Wild West. Nobody knows where it's going to go or what's going to catch.
Is that exciting to you?
Yeah, it is. Particularly because it's at that point right now. It's hard to get money because no one knows where it's going to go. But it's also kind of like the Wild West. It's because bureaucracy has not intervened yet.
It's always a great place to be, right?
World of freedom for creative people.
And in many ways, that kind of echoes the experience from Star Wars, where George Lucas really did kind of the unthinkable, which was form his own independent entity to some extent to create that movie. Does it feel similar to that, or is it something different?
In my relationship with RVR and Mike's holochess thing, it's very much like working with Lucas, but there's even more freedom involved. I mean, George had a script and he had ideas that he wanted to do that we executed, but he was very inclusive. He would say, how would you do this? How would you do that? Just make me a bunch of monsters. I need them in 2 weeks. And so that is certainly a preferred way to work.
Right. Absolutely, because you can really exercise your creativity versus having to conform to some other person's vision.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how George worked on Return of the Jedi. He told me that he wanted to make a scene that was kind of like the cantina scene in Star Wars, but bigger, with more stuff. So he wanted a bunch of aliens. And the script was being written, and I just went off of what he had told me, which was that. So I pulled together a group of about 6 sculptors, and I like to work in 3-dimensional maquettes, small maquettes, very similar to the holochess stuff and the Star Wars chess stuff. They're little characters about that big. And so that's how we went about, pulling that stuff together. Yeah. So George, would come in once a week, like he did on Star Wars, to check out the work, and we'd have like 10 little maquettes on the table, and he'd go, "This one is going to be a singer. This one will play the piano. This one is Admiral Ackbar." And since I didn't know what was in the script, it's like, "Who's Admiral Ackbar?" And he goes like, "He's a general." And he goes like, "So what's, what do you call this thing?" And I said, I call it a calamari man, because the design was based off of the squid.
Right.
And so he formulated that into, the Mon Calamari people or whatever. But he worked a lot like that. There was, we would come up with names that we called these things while we were making them. And then George would take those names and kind of put his own spin on it.
It's really cool. I can imagine just the extent of the universe that had to be built there. He couldn't keep it all. He couldn't design it all himself. He really needed to.
What I thought was interesting, looking back on it, is he was operating in a kind of way like a documentary filmmaker or a child looking at, this is a cool toy. This is a cool. This is really neat. Oh, I can use this for this character, and it's almost like going into walking into an imaginary world that exists, and kind of casting from there.
Right, and really to let the creative people do what they do, and see how that can line up with his story vision, and it worked. It was amazing there. Now I watched
it was a really great time. He was a really great boss.
It sounds like it must have been an exciting period of time, and it was exciting for us, the viewers, as we were watching those films too. And we only have a few more minutes here, but I did want to ask you, because I watched an interview with you recently, and you were talking about how you started as a child doing these stop motion animations, and everyone around you thought you were crazy for continuing to try to make this into your career, but it worked for you. So what kind of advice do you have for someone who's hearing that now as a young person who has a real passion for creativity, whether it's in what you're doing or something similar? What advice do you have for them to be able to build a career in doing what you're doing?
Yeah, the thing is, you need to be committed to it, and just do it. Don't go to parties, don't drink and smoke marijuana. Focus, and you have to breathe it. You just have to live in that world of, in my case, making stuff. And after a while, after a long while, it becomes a very intuitive process, because you teach yourself how to trick yourself into thinking about things that you hadn't thought about before. But the main thing is just sticking with it at all costs.
And it sounds like you really enjoy the work every moment of your career here.
Yeah, that's what I do. I like to work.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Phil, I want to really thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. And the game is called Hologrid Monster Battle, and we were overlaying some scenes of the video of that game as we were talking. So we'll look more at it. I guess it's May the 4th is the big announcement date.
Mm-hmm.
And may the 4th be with you. And look forward to seeing the game. And good luck in the future with it. Thank you. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporter Shabib. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.